Thom, the last question I have about all of this is, if from now on, if this was still the system, just lie about your guy's injury. That's what I would do.
Yep.
If I was Florida State, you know what I would have said from the very get-go? You know what? We're evaluating it. We think there's a chance that we think there's a good chance that he could play on January 1. Doesn't matter. Just lie about it. Who gives a shit?
Right. There's the NCAA.
Seriously, okay, we go back and forth on this stuff all the time, and most of it's tongue-in-cheek. I mean, is anybody going to sit here and try to tell anybody who follows college football that you're going to leave the Southeastern Conference champion out of the college football playoff?
The only reason they did that was Alabama, Thom. That's the
if
only.
Georgia would have won that game, they'd be into.
Well, they're undefeated, Thom.
Well, no, I'm saying if they'd have had one loss coming into the game and they beat unbeaten number 1 Alabama, Georgia would have gotten in too. If LSU had one loss
Even if
this
they had
season, if LSU had one loss this season and they were coming into that game against number 1 Georgia and they beat number 1 Georgia, LSU would be in that. Now, I'm with you on an Ole Miss or somebody like that. I hear you. But when you're talking about, and we've talked about this ad nauseum on this program, really at the end of the day, every conference in the country has 2 really good teams, and then the rest of them are mediocre, are slightly above average, a lot of them. That's what you have. Southeastern Conference, you have 2 blue bloods, and they played each other. And Alabama this year just happened to beat Georgia. There is no way you can have a college football playoff. There's no way you can have a college football playoff and the Southeastern Conference champion not be in.
What?
There's no way.
I agree. Listen, I agree. It seemed
unless Florida State's quarterback wasn't hurt.
Well, so here's a question that I was going to propose to you guys while we're talking, because Trace just said the only reason that they're in is because they're quote unquote Alabama. If it wasn't Florida State that had that pedigree, right? 14-0 ACC or 13-0 ACC champion. And I'm not going to diminish Florida State's reputation in college football, but if it was a team like Clemson, like say Clemson has the exact same resume as Florida State, would they have left Clemson out?
I think they would have.
I don't think they would have, Thom.
Okay.
I don't think they would have.
All right, but over the long haul of college football, you're looking at Clemson over the last 8 years.
I know.
And that's the point. That's the point. Is that shouldn't really matter.
No, it shouldn't.
That shouldn't matter, but that's the facts. Is you're right. Alabama gets the benefit of the doubt because they're Alabama, and maybe you could argue that they deserve the benefit of the doubt. But the reality is I would ask, what is their resume? Is it just because on one given day they're able to beat Georgia, Georgia had 7 starters that either didn't play at all or played less than 50% of the snaps because they were hurt. So no one wants to talk about that. And then again, I'm not here to argue that Georgia should be in the playoff. But what I am here to say is that just because Alabama wins one game in the SEC championship game, then automatically they have to give the benefit of the doubt over everybody else. Well, and that's the way it always goes with these guys.
Well, and some people are saying it's about the money. Look, this year anyway has nothing to do with money. That contract is over as it stands right now. They've already cashed the checks from television. There's a whole new contract where those checks get a lot bigger starting next year when we go to 12 teams. I mean, you talk about stupid money now. I mean, so this year it's not about the money. I just think that the committee looks at it, and again, I'm with all the rest of everybody else. I feel terrible for them. But I don't care if it was Michigan. I don't care if it was Washington. I don't care if it was Georgia. I don't care who it is. If you played with your third-string quarterback, okay, you're going to take a hit. You're going to take a hit. And Alabama just beat a team it hasn't lost in 3 years. They're the two-time and it really wasn't even a neutral field. Let's be honest with us here.
Oh, please.
Last
Georgia was using a silent
game
count.
Is played every year in Georgia.
I'm sick and tired of hearing that bullshit, too.
Like
Alabama doesn't travel, Thom. Alabama. Oh, yeah.
I didn't say that. But when you sell, each school's allowed to sell so many tickets, the way these events work.
50%.
And then the rest of, no, it's not 50%. It's not the way it works. They have an 80,000-seat stadium. 40,000 don't go to Georgia and 40,000 go to Alabama. They each get about 20,000. And then the rest of the bowl is filled in with corporate sponsors and average fans who go scout stuff. The last time I checked, the University of Georgia plays in Georgia. The game is in Georgia.
Right.
So there's no way that is a total neutral field. But it doesn't matter because they've won on that field the last 2 years until this year. They've won the game, fair and square.
Nick Saban's never lost in that stadium, Tom. What's the point?
He's never lost in a stadium?
He's never lost in there. He's never lost to Georgia in that stadium.
Okay. All right.
So what's the point?
The point is they play the
my
game
opposite
in
point.
Georgia. If we played the game, if it wasn't your team that we're talking about here, you would have no skin in this game. If we were playing every year where the best team in the Big Ten played in Indiana, and they played the Big Ten championship game every year in Indianapolis, Indiana, no matter who they played, you would say point blank, I've known you long enough now, you would say anybody who doesn't believe that is a non-neutral field is out of their mind.
Tom,
That's basically how far Indianapolis is from Bloomington is the same as Athens, Georgia to Atlanta, Georgia.
Sure.
If Indiana was playing the Big Ten championship every game in Indianapolis, it's just like the Big 12 basketball tournament.
Tom.
It's a joke. They play it in Kansas City, which is right across the street
20
from the
miles.
University of Kansas.
Right.
It's a joke.
But somehow the best team usually always wins. That's weird.
Most time they do.
Question,
Well,
Tom.
that's in every sport.
Well, question,
That's
Tom.
in every sport.
Where's the Florida Georgia game every single year? You hear me bitching about that? You want to answer that question? Where's that at? It's in Jacksonville.
It's a regular season.
But it's in Jacksonville.
It's a
My point
regular
is this:
season
if all of this is true about how Florida State can't possibly win, and that is true, and we can sit here and debate until we're blue in the face about it, couldn't you argue that it's almost more impressive that they were able to go to their third string quarterback in no time at all? You give that third string quarterback a month to prepare, hey, he's probably going to be a little bit better. But let's just say, for instance, he has to go right in the fire. They went into Florida, a SEC opponent. They beat them. They held Louisville to 6 points, and they beat Louisville with the third string quarterback, the same Louisville team, like I said before, that beat Notre Dame. So to sit here and act like Florida State is nobodies is wild. It is a wild thing. And trust me, you know what Elliot said to me this morning, Tom, that kind of softened my stance on the SEC a little bit this year, is what is the SEC's best out-of-conference win? Do you know what it is?
Not very good. It's not very good. The ACC had a winning record against the Southeastern Conference.
So what are we talking about? So what is it? So it's all speculation then?
No,
Also,
it is all speculation. That is true. That cannot be denied. And
the
I
point.
think a
That's the
reasonable human being, no matter who you root for, a reasonable human being would say Alabama versus Michigan is a far better football game just based on a small body of work, 2 games. And yet you can talk to me about 3 weeks and 4 weeks of prep. I hear you. And their second string guy would be back by then. And he looked pretty good against Florida. Not great, but to be back. I think we all have to come to the common agreement that Michigan-Alabama, at least on paper, is a far superior game than Michigan against the Florida State team we just watched on Saturday night.
So why stop there then, I guess, is the question I'd have to you.
Right.
So if Florida State isn't one of the 4 best teams, then why stop there? Why not pick apart Washington and who they've beaten this year and ask them
they didn't lose their starting quarterback.
If Georgia played
They beat Oregon twice.
It's not why you play sports. If you lose a member of your team,
your
seasons aren't invalidated.
So
if you lose a member of your team, your season doesn't just disappear. You play the sport. That's what sports is.
I guess, Tom,
if I lose my starting point guard for UC this year, if we lose Day Thomas, our season still goes on. You don't get to not play because you lose a player.
You're
That's
right.
not what sports
and look
is.
what happened to UC when Kenyon Martin went down.
Sure.
Look what happened to UC when Kenyon Martin went down.
Tom, I guess
Carson Wentz was an MVP candidate in 2018. Nick Foles led them to a Super Bowl.
But you're comparing apples to oranges with the NFL compared to the college game because the NFL, they play it, like you said, on the field. You have a tournament. The rules of the game are set up ahead of time. This committee has the rules set up ahead of time, and we can agree to disagree about it. No problem with that. I get it. But the rule clearly states if a team is impacted by a major injury on that team, that will be taken into account.